Upskilling and reskilling is on the top of the corporate agenda when it comes to future-proofing their performance and profitability. But what are the skills that we need to focus on today to secure better educations and better jobs? Is it the physical, the manual, the social, the emotional, the technical skills, or it's something completely different? Is it even skills that we need to focus on? The World Economic Forum says that up to 65% of the children that start schools today will have jobs in the future that does not yet exist. So how to break with the conventions? How should educational systems and institutions and businesses deal with this prediction and level of uncertainty? My name is Caroline Hardt-Segsted, and I have the pleasure of being the host for this 8-session live session for TEDx Copenhagen with the topic, Is Traditional Education a Dinosaur? We are here at Matricle 1, and today we are lucky to have two guests with us in our virtual studio. The first guest is Nora Sigenhagen, who is the business lead for Google Digital Academy for EMEA. And our second guest is Gregor Hoff, who is the Dean at Copenhagen Business School. They will both bring their different viewpoints on education and learning from a corporate and an educational perspective. So our first guest, Nora Sigenhagen, who worked for Google for more than 14 years and currently in the position as the business lead for Google EMEA Digital Academy. She's responsible for activating great learning to help Google's customers feel equipped for the digital transformation and successfully grow in a digital world. So let's see if we can get Nora to join us in our live TEDx Copenhagen session tonight. It looks like she's connecting. Hi, Nora.
Hi, Carolina.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share your viewpoints on educational in the workplace.
Very happy to be here.
Great. Nora, you joined Google back in 2006, and actually none of your previous jobs had ever been working in the digital space. In fact, at the time when you joined Google, you recently changed having a pager to a BlackBerry. But you kind of sold yourself as someone who had a history of learning new things and learning it fast. So that's what you did, and that's what you have continued doing across countries and different roles in Google. And now you've been working with education and learning for in the workplace for more than 15 years. So why has this been so important for you to drive this agenda on educating employees in the workplace?
Yeah, well, as you can see, I wasn't an early adopter from the beginning with technology.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't actually start in education, Carolina, but I quickly realized two things at Google. That number one, my favorite part about my work was seeing that aha in people's eyes when they learn something new, that light in people's eyes. And number two, that it wasn't just me who needed to increase my digital skills, that we all needed to increase our digital skills, that we're not born knowing how to put a formula into a spreadsheet or how to create a digital marketing strategy. But as adults, you know, we've been to elementary school, we've been to high school. In Denmark, most of us have been to university. So we don't want another grade school teacher who's going to stand at the front of the class and tell us what to do. You know, we need new formats. We need more flexible formats, more action-oriented formats. And so it is really exciting to me to work on the cutting edge of that, creating new formats like that while still having a personal connection with people.
And so, Nora, when you talk about these new formats of educating people, I mean, I think that you have been quite disruptive in Google, introducing the 3 to 6 months career certification programs, which was launched a couple of years ago, and which, as I understanding, should be equivalent to having a master degree. So what was kind of the rationale to launch this program, and what have been the benefits and the challenges for businesses, but also for education as we know it today?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Firstly, though, I'd like to take a quick step back and frame the challenges for businesses, because if you ask any hiring manager or somebody in HR, they're going to tell you it's already hard to recruit the right strategic and specialist roles to lead technological change.
Mm-hmm.
And the kicker is it's just going to get harder
Yeah.
due to demographic shifts, the decrease in labor supply. And this isn't just a global thing. This is in Denmark too. I read in Berlinske that just last month that there's already an acute shortage of IT workers, and yet there are fewer young people who have applied for an IT education. So even if students came out of university perfectly skilled, there would still be a skill gap due to the aging population. And we need to make sure that we have the right skills. So what are the right skills? The right skills are hard skills. The right skills are soft skills. Hard skills like data analysis and visualization, user experience, digital first marketing, what companies need to help best bring their products to potential consumers and to showcase your products better online. Everybody needs that, as all companies need those hard skills. And then soft skills like social skills, cross-functional skills, persuasion, emotional intelligence, active learning. These are all really needed to solve the big problems of today, to have facilitated discussions and bring people together. And that can't be replicated by an artificial intelligence solution.
No, but can it then be included? Because I think that's what a lot of companies are struggling with, and also education. How do you teach social skills and emotional skills? And I think especially during the last 1.5 years with COVID, where people have not been able to interact. So is that something that you have thought into those 3 to 6 months certification programs, or is it something that you can teach in a virtual room? Or how do you work with that soft skills in Google?
Totally. So I would say that we teach hard skills to individuals individually via the Google professional certificates that you raise, that you're talking about. And then we teach hard skills and soft skills to companies in small groups via the Google Digital Academy. So those are two key approaches, because hard skills can be mastered in the library or in front of a computer, but soft skills are really best learned with others, where they can be immediately applied. So if you'd like, I can talk for a couple more minutes about both of these.
Yeah, go ahead, Nora.
Yes. So the Google professional certificates, the goal with those is really to help individuals to reach their economic potential, regardless of previous education or experience, and fill hiring pipelines with diverse candidates. And we're doing this with the creation of 4 self-paced 3 to 6 month courses. They're data analysis, project management, user experience, and IT support. And they're created by Googlers who are in similar roles, with industry input from an employer consortium of about 130 employers. And they cost about 2,000 Danish kroner on Coursera and have over an 80% placement rate. So it's really exciting to see how we're able to make it more efficient and effective to bring skills into the industry. And we currently have over 50,000 graduates.
And is it something that is connected to parts of the educational system, or is it something that is, you can say, done separately on a corporate platform, or is it seems like it's an add-on for people who have already an education, or is it for everyone?
So it can be for everyone, right? So there's no previous education or experience required to do it. And we've partnered with employers and with Coursera. But the piece about having universities as part of that equation is a very interesting one. And I think that that's definitely where we need to be going.
And that kind of leads me to the next question, because when you talk about these programs, it seems like it's a great opportunity to kind of narrow down that skill gap as you were talking about. Because I think that what we see and as an issue when we look at the traditional educational system is that, you know, by the time that the graduates are, you can say, graduating, now even more than ever, the market may already have, you know, moved on to new technological advancement, and how do you tackle that? Do you see like that there's a need or an opportunity to kind of, for universities to partner up in online platforms or with corporate education to ensure that people get the right education needed for future jobs, or how do you see that going forward?
Yes, definitely. And
This is a crystal ball question.
it totally. But absolutely, we need to partner. It needs to be universities, it needs to be companies, it needs to be employers, all part of this equation. And I'll come back to that point. First, I'd like to highlight that most of the issues we face today globally, food and water scarcity, climate change, digital transformation, education reform, these are so big and so challenging that no single company, sector, industry is going to be able to solve them alone, let alone one dude in front of his computer.
Yeah.
And so this is a massive effort that's going to require collaboration and the soft skills that we just talked about that are so needed in the future of work, right? Cross-functional collaboration, leadership, persuasion, emotional intelligence. These are what's needed also to solve our big challenge, right, of education reform. So this is happening in some cases, these alliances, but it's a bit more program based. And what we need is a systemic approach where employers are also inputting to curriculum in the form of theory and apprenticeships to ensure the degree is aligned to industry needs. And as you said, that by the time the degree is granted, the needs of the market haven't changed.
Yeah. And I think that is what also World Economic Forums are starting to focus on when they talk about creating this reskilling revolution as a joint effort to make sure that we secure upskilling people and securing better jobs in the future. Was also part of the Davos convention in Switzerland last year. But when we talk about these, you can say, joint efforts or joint alliances, that it sounds like you're also advocating for to make that change on the huge problems when you talk about sustainability in education and stuff like that. But when you kind of, I mean, you've been involved with so many different corporate institutions. what do you see the mega trends in the workforce that we kind of need to be aware of when we talk education and learning in the workforce?
Yes. There are so many. I think the key piece is that companies are and will continue to try and create a culture of innovation and learning to attract scarce talent. And the ways that they're doing this that will continue to amplify the top 3 or 4 I'll give you here.
Yeah.
Continuous learning. So by this, I mean in that companies are incentivizing, funding, and creating space for continuous learning and not just quarterly trainings. So that learning isn't just a separate thing where, it gets scheduled and you go to a conference center or a hotel to go do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The
You
nature
get a budget, and then you can go once a year and then wait for next year's budget to go again.
Right, or it's a compliance training or
Yeah. Yeah.
no, I mean, we need the nature of innovation is learning something new. And when you're trying to innovate, you need to learn at the moment that's important for you to then take that next step forward in innovating. So our own individual preference for getting that education in the moment that matters to us will
Yeah.
fuel a demand for continuous learning
Yeah.
options being
Yeah.
available. I know in my experience, I work with a lot of learning designers. I'm on the business side and I wanted to know a lot more about learning design. And I probably spent more time trying to find the right course about learning design than the course actually took me to complete. And what we're going to see in the future, and another key trend, is that rather than having to dig through a mountain of courses yourself, these options will be powered by artificial intelligence and data.
Yeah. So that would be kind of the first mega trends about continuous learning and the importance of individual preferences.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence being able to match the right program to your preference.
Yeah.
And so I'll highlight 2 more for you.
Mm-hmm.
There will also be much more access to education. And this is such a beautiful thing because what we see happening more and more is that companies are beginning to value what skills have been acquired as much as they would value a degree achieved, right? So that it's not just about the brand name on a fancy degree, that you can get a skill, and that specific skill alone that's needed from a company, and that will be valued, as we see with the Google professional certificates. But, access to
And do you
people who
see
don't.
a movement of change in big corps that are taking in a lot of talents, that they are looking more towards, capabilities and mindsets and how you learn and not the degree? And if so, do we even need an educational system in the future, or will that just be part of you can say corporate education going forward?
Well, I think that, like so many things in the world right now, it is about personalization. And there are going to be people who really desire that rigorous 3 to 6 year degree. And there are going to be people who don't see the ROI on their time and would prefer to do a 3 to 6 month skill-based accreditation and get on with it.
Yeah.
And we need it all in order
Yeah.
to close that skill gap.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see that employers believe in both, right? So we have 130 plus employers that have signed on to the Google professional certificate saying that, yes, we would hire somebody who has this,
Yeah.
just as Google is doing.
Yeah. And Nora, did you have a final megatrend you want to share with us before we move on to the last question?
Yeah, I really would.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. So we talked about this in our pre-call as well, Carolina. Company culture of innovation and learning really requires psychological safety. And so this isn't a Google term, this is an industry term. It's around thinking and acting in a way that you believe to be right without fear of negative consequences.
Yeah.
And
But
the
didn't Google make like a case on it at some point? Yeah.
So we did research across hundreds of managers, really good managers, really terrible managers, and we interviewed their bosses, we interviewed their direct reports, and we learned that psychological safety, more than anything else, team size, team proximity, experience, that is what creates a high performing team,
Yeah.
is having psychological safety. And so I
And
think, go ahead.
and when you talk about psychological safety, it's about, it's okay making mistakes. It's okay to speak out your opinion, stuff
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yes. And that is much easier said than done, right? In a charged work environment. Um, and so what I'd say is that it's really about being able to bring your whole self to work, and
Yeah.
not just to the water cooler, but actually to actual meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick personal story. I was invited to tell a challenging personal story in a EMEA meeting with 40 some odd people, some of whom I'd never met before, and about having breast cancer while I was pregnant and what I
Okay.
learned from that
Wow.
in a team meeting with everyone. And
Yeah.
that really sends a cultural signal
Yeah.
about being able to talk about personal challenges
Yeah.
and putting people first.
Yeah.
And when you can talk about personal challenges like that,
Yeah.
business challenges seem so much less charged.
Yeah.
My work is not life and death, right? And so you can relax a bit,
Yeah.
knowing that the business decisions aren't the be all and end all, that
Yeah.
there's more
Yeah.
to life.
Yeah. Yeah. And showing that vulnerability and sensitivity is what sometimes also creates that psychological safety, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more ways to think about creating psychological safety.
But this was a really good example that I think that all of us will remember as a story that I hope turned out well. At least we're speaking together now, so it sounds like you came on the other side of that disease. But Nora, we are getting to the last question now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of your followers and viewers who really enjoy the opportunity of hearing such a passionate corporate person talking about learning and education. So what would be your final advice for companies and for students to remain relevant in a fast developing world that we are facing right now?
Yes. Okay. One for students, one for companies.
Great.
I hope we all consider ourselves students, lifetime
Yeah.
learners. But I would say to students, instead of asking yourself and others what what you want to be when you grow up, ask what problem they want to solve.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old son was recently asked this, and he said he wanted to be a garbage man. Not my dream answer, but
Yeah.
but on the flip side, garbage truck drivers as a role that's likely to become automated. Most jobs where you can easily explain what needs to be done will be automated. So instead, I talked with Jack about what problem he wants to solve. Of course, he wants to solve ice cream for all the kids in the world.
Yeah.
But I think that, what this question does is that it reframes things about not
Yeah.
what do you want to do in 10 to 20 years, but what can you solve today? And giving kids the opportunity to take initiative, identify a problem, learn a new skill, and solve it. And that's exactly what we need to be successful in the future of work.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
Nora. And I guess that you can say advice also goes for people in their personal career development, not being focused on the next title, but on the next problem they want to solve.
That's a very good piece of advice as well on the career side. I sure wish that we could continue this conversation, Carolina. I do realize that we're coming to a head here.
We are coming to an end, but I really want to thank you for sharing everything you've done with the Google certification program, but also your personal learnings and stories. I know that this is what people will most likely remember after this session. So thank you so much, Nora, for joining us today, and good luck on continuing moving the needle on the education and in the workplace. Thank you so much. And
thank you so much.
we are ready for the next guest, who is the Dean of Copenhagen Business School. It's Gregor Hoff, and Gregor has previously been the professor of corporate communication and the deputy dean at Singapore Management University. And Gregor's research and teaching has mainly been in the field of corporate communication and public relations. And he has also actually recently been involved in a global research study or project to define the universal professional capabilities needed in communication management. And beyond that, we are happy to have Gregor a little bit part of the TEDx Copenhagen community, because Gregor has also been one of our members in our advisory board for our Future of Work live sessions at Copenhagen Business School. So it's really with great honor that we have Gregor with us tonight. So let's see if we can get him in the studio.
Carolina, how are you?
There you are. Fantastic. Great to see you. And thank you so much for joining us this evening, Gregor.
My great pleasure.
Gregor, you have been working with education for several decades all around the world, from Singapore to Germany to Finland and now Denmark. So what have kind of been your key motivator for working with education through all these years? And if you look back, is traditional education really a dinosaur?
A dinosaur? Well, well, I hope so. I hope it's a dinosaur.
Okay, you need to tell me why.
Yeah. I mean, dinosaurs were around far longer on this earth than humans were, right? They also managed to not destroy their ecosystem, which is not something that we can actually claim for ourselves as well. They were clearly the kings of the planet in their time, and they're still providing us energy these days. So in a way, I hope traditional education is a dinosaur. But Carolina, to be fair, of course, we need to watch out for the asteroid, right? What is the asteroid of traditional education? And there's probably three, or at least I can think of at least three. They are. There's a form of expansion going on. I'll comment on that in a second. There's a form of destruction going on, and there's an extension going on. The expansion that I mean is, and actually we've just heard about it as well. The expansion that's going on is the expansion of cognitive resources, and that is happening via artificial intelligence. Surely that must have an impact on what we teach, how we teach it, and to whom we teach it. The second is destruction. There's a destruction of our natural resources going on. So while we have an expansion of the cognitive resources, there's a destruction of the natural resources. Surely that must be something that education, particularly business education, but not just, must respond to. And the third is extension. The extension of human life. What I mean is, Noah's kid's probably going to be 100 years old. Well, good for him. but he's also going to work for 60 years. So clearly, we need a 60-year curriculum here for a 100-year life. Yeah. So I would think that those are the three asteroids that we need to watch out for: expansion of cognitive resources, destruction of natural resources, and the 100-year life.
Yeah, and I think when you refer to Nora's kid and the whole talk about what do you want to be when you grow up, instead of which kind of problem do you want to solve. You've previously mentioned, Gregor, that you feel that the students, they don't have enough time to reflect on questions like, what is my role in this world? What do all these changes mean to me, and how should I react to them? So what does educational system need to do to give more time to reflect to students?
I think we need to stop doing two things and start a third one. Okay. Actually, Nora mentioned it as well when she mentioned the problem orientation. What universities have not been, or rather, what universities have been too good at is identity-based education. So if you, Caroline, if I ask you to think of a lawyer, and then think of a chemist, and then think of a marketing person, you will have different identities in your head. We do stereotyping, but people also do self-stereotyping. They search for an identity in a university. People searching for the identity of the chemist are looking for a different identity than those searching for the identity of a marketing person. And universities have been providing that. Come to us, I'll make you a chemist. And in fact, professors work on that as well. The professorial identity of a chemist is different than the professorial identity of a marketer. So that identity building, we've got to stop doing that. We've been too good at it, so that people can find that out for themselves rather than being given their identity. The second is something that universities have actually not been doing too much, but I'm afraid that companies are doing it a lot, and even more now. And that is skills-based education, as in focusing on individual things that can solve individual problems, rather than capabilities that are always combinations of skills that you, as learner, decide to apply to different problems. Now, companies like doing that. They like talking about skills. They like teaching skills. There's nothing wrong with that, but alone, it's not enough. And you can see what happens then if you get a identity-based education in university, and then you get the skills-based input from companies. Then you're being squeezed as a learner, and then you can't find out, well, what problems, and I'm quoting Nora here, what problems do I actually really want to solve?
Yeah. And so when you talk about stop, focusing on the skill-based education, both in the workplace and in the educational system, and start to focus more on capabilities, I know, Gregor, you have really been a pioneer within the educational system on bringing new ideas and initiatives to the table. So what are some of the new strategies that you hope to roll out or implement at Copenhagen business schools to kind of change that movement and stop the identity and the skills-based education? What is it that you would like to see in the future educational system at Copenhagen business school?
Yeah. Well, Caroline, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I don't think I am the innovator, but what we did in Copenhagen, and anybody can do this, right? As in, do this at home. We asked 3,000 of our stakeholders, in business, in employers, in the public sector, our alumni, 3,000, and we asked them again and again, what do you think are the capabilities that will be needed in the next 20, 30 years? What are the problems that will have to be solved? Not today, because then you get answers from Excel or stuff like that. But what are the problems in the next 20, 30 years? There was 3,000 people that we involved in this. And out of that came 9 capabilities. And again, I didn't come up with those. I was just the orchestrator of that process. And we've decided at Copenhagen Business School to make those 9 capabilities the basis for all of our learning outcomes, and basically for all of our 78 programs that we have.
Yeah. And so that's what you call the Nordic Nine capabilities, which is kind of something that you want to try to include in all your, is it 78 different
degree? We have 78 different degree scrolls, not quite as many programs, but yes. And Carolina, the reason why we call them Nordic is because they're nearly always, or what came out of that process with the 3000 is that they're nearly always about balancing. So they're about balancing your analytical capability with your tolerance for ambiguity, for example. Now, teaching that is hard, but it will be a crucial capability in the future. They're about balancing, for example, your desire to grow with your capacity to help others grow as well. Those are things individually are already hard, but they're certainly hard putting them together. But that is the duty of universities.
Well, and that is something that you are rolling out now, or
as we're speaking.
So that would be interesting to see. But I really like the way that you have made that strategy, not from inside out, but really understanding from the businesses and the future needs. What are the problems that we will have to solve, and then kind of make the strategy based on that, and make sure that it's part of the curriculum on all the degrees. So that's something to look out for and see how that goes.
Watch this space.
Maybe you can also talk a little bit about or continue the talk and the learnings that we got from Nora and what they do at Google, trying to get more education into the corporate life with these Google certification programs. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think that it will fit into the education as we know it today?
Well, these are a real opportunity for all of society, I should think. If we manage to avoid a number of mistakes together, the first step is, let's not make the mistake of pretending, and I know that many companies don't pretend this, but let's not pretend that this is new. Up till a few decades ago, this is what companies did. They employed people, they educated them, sometimes they housed them, they took care of the widowers or widows and of the families, etc. So that was not an unusual thing historically for companies to do. It was part of their responsibility of making sure that when you join a company for large parts or even whole of your life, the company feels responsible for your further education as well. I am very happy that companies are now rediscovering that, but let's not pretend that that is a completely new thing. The second danger that I think we need to avoid is that this does not just become, and you've mentioned it early on, Carolina, this does not just become tokenistic. It does not just become making sure that I input one skill here and then on Monday you can do X. That would be about the furthest away you can get from capabilities-based and problem-based learning. I think the real opportunity here is creating a system of intermittent learning. And what I mean with that is, if you look at the 100-year life and the 60-year curriculum, certainly people are not going to come back to universities again and again. So what that means is we'll have to look together where does most learning happen anyway after your first degree. And that happens in the workplace. So if we can find a way of creating learning careers that are intermittent, where you have work phases and then a learning phase, which is designed by companies and by universities together, then we would be a very long way into the 60-year curriculum for 100-year lives.
Yeah, it's funny because we just talked about that in the live studio here. We have a lot of great students supporting the TEDx Copenhagen, and there's definitely a desire to integrate having more collaborations with the companies as part of your educations. Some degrees have, as part of the degree or the semester, that there's an internship. So, but I know others don't, and I also know that from my time in Novo Nordisk that what we saw was really beneficial was when we had the students work on different cases in the company, and also when we as professionals went into the classroom and taught as guest teachers on a specific case. So I think that is also what I'm hearing you saying, that interface and joint collaboration could be much better than we see it today.
There is, of course, a unique role for universities in that collaboration, and that is the research base.
Yeah.
There's only one, basically in the history of mankind, there's only one organization that combines research as an independent research with education, and that is universities. Yeah. What universities currently do is that they teach what they've researched. I think now is also the opportunity, and they should keep doing that, but there's also the opposite way. Yeah. My appeal to universities is always, well, why don't we find out what needs to be taught tomorrow so that we can start researching it today? And that is basically reversing that sequence a little bit.
Yeah. And so with your knowledge in education, and also I know you're very active in the corporate life, what do you see as the mega trends that will influence the way educational systems will look in the future? How do they need to adapt to mega trends that will happen most likely?
Well, the mega trends, and sorry, I'm being a bit doomsayer here, but the three asteroids that I just mentioned, they're certainly mega trends, right? As in the expansion of cognitive resources, the destruction of natural resources, and the 100-year life. I think to make that a trend, we need to respond to that. And there's some real opportunities, right? The intermittent learning I've mentioned earlier on, the capabilities learning, you'll not be surprised, I find there's a second mega trend that could be our response type. The third is we need to start being honest about cross-disciplinary teaching and research. Usually what we mean by that is that people who publish in different journals, they also publish something together. That's not entirely fair, and it's a bit exaggerated, but real transdisciplinary or multidisciplinary work, in my view, should and will in future cross at least two boundaries, as in philosophical boundaries, say having a chemist and a philosopher do something together, or a marketing person and an engineer. So really two philosophical boundaries, and two cultural boundaries. So if we can get that kind of education, and I think there will be a higher demand for it in the coming years that really crosses those, well, I would say paradigmatic boundaries.
Yeah. And I think that now we're starting to go into what are your advices for academic institutions and students to stay relevant? This is our last question, Gregor, because you can say you've gone through a lot of great things that you do at the Copenhagen business schools and talked about the mega trends, but what would be your best advices to academic institutions and students to kind of stay relevant and have that live learning perspective as their GPS? Because I know that live learning part is something that is at least your GPS and what you would like to have students as their guidance star. So what would be your advices for institutions and students to stay relevant?
Well, do we have a few hours, Caroline?
You have about 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute.
2 minutes.
Then I'll mention 4.
Great.
Maybe they're all a bit counterintuitive. I'll start with the individual learner. So my main advice there is you're not done with your first degree. It's painful, but you won't be done. So accept that. For universities, the counterintuitive element of let's think first what we need to teach in 12 years and research it today. I think that's going to be a key opportunity here as well. For companies, you're not done after hiring, meaning what you've got yourself is a real investment into a person's education for multiple years. And in countries where education is at least partly state organized, like Denmark and, well, actually in all of the Scandinavian countries, I think the state and society needs to accept that they're also not done with just financing people's first degree. We need a financing system that allows us to take societal responsibility and funding, make funding possible for that intermittent kind of teaching system that we earlier spoke about.
I think that's some great advices that also gives some responsibilities to the corporate life, but also the government in regards of making sure that they secure future skills and future educations. And I'm not going to say skills because now we're talking about capabilities, which is what you as a believer that we should kind of move away from the skills-based education and the identity-based education. And I think that those are some really great ways to think about education as guiding stars. And with that, I want to say thank you so much, Gregor, for spending the night with us. And we look forward to following the Nordic Nine capabilities go to live in the education system. So talk to you soon, Gregor, and have a good evening.
Thanks, Carolina. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And with that, we are coming to an end of the session. And I want to say a huge thank you to Nora from Google and to Gregor from Copenhagen Business School. Thank you so much for sharing your different perspectives on education in the corporate life and in the academic institutions. I also, of course, want to say a special thanks to all of our followers, to Matricle 1, where we have our TEDx Copenhagen studio. And of course, I want to say a big thank you to TEDx Copenhagen team, who's been working really hard behind the scenes to get these sessions up and going. And we will be back at September 14th with our 9th session with the topic taboos in our modern work life. So looking forward to seeing you then, and make sure to tune in. Bye.